Call your friends, wake the neighbors, and hold on to your butts because the Dracula Podcast has returned for Season 3. Welcome to Season 3 of the Dracula Podcast, the sexiest show on the internet. Thank you to friends, family, sponsors, and most of all, you for listening. Looking for a great listen? You found it. The best of screen, script, stage, and scene dedicated to the legacy of the King Bram Stoker. Get in touch with us at the Dracula Podcast on Facebook. Check out our archives at southgatemediagroup.com. And take the ride. iTunes, Stitcher, Libsynth, we are literally everywhere. Sometimes timing is everything. I released an unedited commentary on Horror of Dracula and commented more than once on how annoyed I was that there wasn't a Region A Blu-ray made for Horror of Dracula by Warner Archive. Warner does own the rights to this. Well, 2 days after I recorded such, guess what? December 18th, Warner Archive is releasing Horror of Dracula for the first time on Region A. So that means it's almost complete, the Hammer series. Because of Warner's new announcement, this is what you can do. The first film is, of course, Horror of Dracula. You have no idea how long we've waited to have Horror of Dracula on Region A Blu-ray. Seriously. For someone who's wanted to see the film in high def and really get the most of that score, it's been a long wait, but December 18th, the wait will be over. Now, I'm not sure if this is coincidence, but this is from a different company. I told you that Dracula Prince of Darkness will be re-released on Blu-ray, but the date is also on December 18th, this time from Shout Factory Scream Factory. It is not owned by Warner Brothers, it is owned by Cinedigm. Coincidence? I'm not sure. This year, on October 16th, Dracula AD 1972 was released, and The Satanic Rites of Dracula was released on November 13th, also from Warner Archive. So, on December 18th, this is what you can have. Horror of Dracula, Film 1. Film 2, Brides of Dracula, only you can get that from the Hammer Classics pack from Universal, available in Blu-ray. You can get Dracula Prince of Darkness on this new 4K remastered Blu-ray from Scream Factory. I have the old one. I may get the new one, just depending. Also, Dracula Has Risen from the Grave and Taste the Blood of Dracula are also available via Warner Archive. The missing piece is Scars of Dracula, which is actually my favorite film. I'm not sure who has the rights to it, but it is available via Region B Blu-ray. However, the next two films, AD 1972 and The Satanic Rites of Dracula, are also available via Warner Archive. We've got a lot. With what's been released, you can almost own the entire Hammer Dracula series, save two. If you don't count anything but Christopher Lee, it's only one, and which is Scars of Dracula. Also missing is The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires. And don't forget about Brides of Dracula from the Hammer Horror 8-film collection on Blue. Last time I looked at it, it was $29, and my favorite Hammer film, Curse of the Werewolf, is available via that pack. Also, they have the Terence Fisher version of Phantom of the Opera with Curse of the Werewolf, 4 other films. Oh, and by the way, Brides of Dracula, it is definitely worth the purchase. So our yelling and complaining has worked. There are a few other Dracula products which have not hit HD. There's a really stupid film which was made in the 60s, 1966, which is called Billy the Kid vs. Dracula. And it is very stupid, but it also has John Carradine. You can see Carradine aging in this. If you're a completist, check it out, and regardless of the title, it's still about 50,000 miles better than that abomination released in 2004 by a company which will not be named. Also on Region 2 DVD is Mystery and Imagination, Dracula 1968, starring Denholm Elliott, but you cannot get it here in the U.S. It is available to see elsewhere. I like it. It's very atmospheric. It reminds me of an earlier version of the 1977 version of the BBC, and it's good. It's spooky. They kind of go the Nosferatu route. It's a severely abridged film, but it's differently abridged than the Balderson play that we all know. Now, the one which really strikes me the most is, of course, the 77 BBC version of Count Dracula, which I would say is my favorite right now. I'm still struggling with the what's my favorite Dracula. Count Dracula is the closest to the book, but also an interesting film not on DVD is an anime film called Dracula Sovereign of the Damned, which is an adaptation of Marvel's classics Tomb of Dracula. It's goofy, it's weird, it's set in the 70s, the voice acting's bad, but it's about 50,000 miles better than the film which shall not be named. We hinted last week on the renaissance of Bram Stoker's Dracula, 1992, from Francis Ford Coppola. If you thought it was just a one-time thing, well, you're wrong. Not only can you see it everywhere, not only is it one of the most easily consumable Dracula pictures around, but by the time this podcast is released, you've got another wonderful gift coming. La La Land Records, which I assume is not related to the film, is releasing a 3-disc expanded soundtrack. Bram Stoker's Dracula by Wojciech Kyler. The packaging is beautiful. The extras are amazing. This is over 3 hours and 15 minutes of music. Before, it was about 45 minutes to an hour-long piece of music. But at 3 hours and 15 minutes of music, it is longer than the film, and yes, I want one. It's easily the best music set to Dracula media, though Penny Dreadful comes a close second. It's one of the most overused pieces in cinema and trailers. If you recall in American Horror Story Season 1, they used the beginning, where Gary Oldman's Dracula renounces God in front of Anthony Hopkins, who will later come back as Van Helsing. The soundtrack is one of the best parts of Bram Stoker's Dracula. I've yet to really dive into the film. Of course it gets the seal of approval. Of course it's one of the most faithful adaptations. It's a very good film on its own. Yes, I'm annoyed with it because it steers away from the novel and it makes Dracula romantic and it gives that Vlad the Impaler connection. However, it's a great film. It's the only vampire product to win an Academy Award, and it won 3 and was nominated for 4. Speaking of the film, I'll be taking a look at some of the video games in the 90s surrounding Bram Stoker's Dracula and its continued renaissance. We'll get to that right after the break, and we'll be right back at you with the Dracula Podcast. Here we go.
Tens of thousands of our citizens hate their work. Folks can't pay their student loans, bills, or feed their families. Life is hard. That's where Freddy Freeloader's line of medical mushrooms serve the community. Supervisors and elected officials want to give that cute new secretary an extra nudge? Try the new Infidelity Shroom, guaranteed to make the new girl pull up her skirt faster than a moose in heat.
Oh my. Wow.
Want to get your boss off your case? Our award-winning IQ killer is just for you. Just squeeze and mix into their coffee and turn that royal prick into your new best friend. Wish you were a superhero? Our fresh blend of LSD meth mushrooms will have you serving justice by throwing that mean old lady out of the window. Freddy Freeloaders, just give us a chance. Freddy Freeloaders is not responsible for arrests, inevitable lawsuits, divorces, firings, and broken dreams.
I really didn't feel that getting into video games was necessary, but the dynamic of media and how we consume it has changed so much. Even from when I started this podcast, it's impossible to ignore, and especially with the renaissance of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So what we're going to do is we're devoting a segment of the podcast to some of the games featuring the character of Dracula.
Yeah, right. I've got the vintage 1875 Jefferson Davis
Dice games such as Fury of Dracula, PC classics like King's Quest II, and console games like Castlevania are all game where Dracula has appeared. They're all game, pun intended. The renaissance of Bram Stoker's Dracula continues. It's one of Sony's most important films, and let's dig a little bit on Sony. For all the large-scale stinkers, Sony's gotten a lot of heat. The Emoji Movie, The Dark Tower, the Ghostbusters remake, Godzilla 1998, Fantastic Four 05, Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer, Hulk 2003, Daredevil 2003, Elektra, X-Men The Last Stand, Ghost Rider, Venom, Spider-Man 3, Amazing Spider-Man 2, basically anything Avi Arad has sway on. They also produced the Hotel Transylvania films, which I will never watch. However, they do have some good stuff. They are the studio behind Bram Stoker's Dracula. Now, for all you historians, they did buy Columbia Pictures in 1989, so this falls under the Sony banner. This film did well all the way around. It was nominated for 4 Oscars. The one that it didn't win was art, but it won 3 in costume, makeup, and sound editing. It spent a $40 million budget. Inflated, that's around 72.1. A domestic gross of $82 million and worldwide $215 million. It's about $387.53 million, and domestically that's $147.8 million. Even not including inflation, this is still one of the most successful horror films of all time, and especially for Sony. I believe it is their number one R-rated film, at least in the horror genre. It was 9th in worldwide box office in 1992, but if you take a look at its competition, you'll see why it was so low, but it is a winner all the way around. Other ways to make money off of this product was through the video game world, and it was released everywhere. Bram Stoker's Dracula was on DOS, the Sega Master System, which was, I believe, the 8-bit version, Genesis, My Boy, the Amiga, Game Boy, Game Gear, NES, Super NES, and Sega CD. It even had a bloody pinball game made out of it. And just showing how much research that I've cracked on this thing, just to show how much research we've done. On IPDB, the International Pinball Database, it is ranked number 14 of all time. The video games, while having the same title, were actually pretty different. The Genesis Super NES versions were action platformers with great music. Those are probably the ones that you're most familiar with. I had a Sega Genesis over a Super NES, and it was a great time waster. The Sega CD, which many hated, was a digital background FMV. There's been some reviews on how bad it was. The Angry Video Game Nerd does also a great job on all the Dracula video game media which was released. I liked it. It was a bit ahead of its time. If it was released, say, at the end of the Nintendo 64 era, I think that it would have worked. The NES is also a platformer, but it's boring and not much to write home about. Let's lock in a little bit on the PC version. Right around this time, the first-person shooter was coming alive. I played with games like, of course, Doom, Doom 2, Quake, Hexen, etc. The first-person shooter of Bram Stoker's Dracula was released 3 years after the film's release in 1995. It's weird, clunky, but the menu music and the art feels right. I know you're going to disagree, but if you've taken a look at the Dracula games, it's one of the better ones. I grew up with the Genesis version, which is hard as goodness gracious. If you've played the Genesis version or the SNES version, I've got a few words here to remind you just how hard the game is. Spike Hallway. Have fun with it. I really want to like the Sega CD version, but the Genesis is so much better. The Sega CD version looks superior, but the Genesis/Super NES game is the most playable. Good luck on that. Other cool stuff that you can get a hold of. Topps is re-releasing the graphic novels of Bram Stoker's Dracula. There's tons of toys, figurines you can get a hold of it. This place has left an indelible mark in the history of horror cinema. It's so easily consumable. When I was a kid, there was a rumor flying out there that there was a 3.5-hour version that showed me boobs. And if you recall, that's where Monica Bellucci got her start. Thank you for that. And there's so much to get into with Bram Stoker's Dracula. We can talk about it from an art standpoint, the directing standpoint. There's so much good stuff available out there. And oh, by the way, it is quite possible that Keanu Reeves and Winona Ryder actually got married on the set of Bram Stoker's Dracula. If you take a look at the scene where Dracula's violating Lucy and Jonathan and Mina are getting married concurrently, that was an actual wedding. From what I was told, they actually did get married, so it's a nice piece of lore. I mean, you can't blame Keanu, can you? Winona Ryder, come on. And I have a feeling we're going to be touching on Bram Stoker's Dracula all the way through this season. We've got some more stuff, including another criticism of a novel featuring Bram Stoker's great character, and we'll get to it right after these messages.
They come from the forest.
Did you say the blessing, sweetie?
Yes, Mommy.
They come from your neighborhoods. And they're coming for you.
Give me that Bible, man.
Mommy!
Tree huggers, hippies, commies, and freaks are coming for you and your families. But guess what? The days of their drug abuse violence are over because Governor J.K. James is taking out the trash.
No, please.
Oh, yeah. With your help, we can send the dirty hippies back to the communes where they belong.
Hello there. My name is J.K. James, candidate for governor in 2024. After long discussions with my family, friends, my 572 mistresses, the Russian mob, Holly Walnuts, as well as each one of my 23 illegitimate children, I will be running for you. The idea came to me one night as I bathed in the blood of puppies and homeless people. The environmental laws hindering West Virginia are killing our jobs. Mountains, trees, rivers, tourist attractions, fish, hiking, and demented geese are taking money out of your pocket. So whenever you see an animal crossing the road, you gun the engine and run the furry communist down, because every dead animal is another job saved. As for the children, they are killing us. Would you rather see an unemployed Best Mart associate and a happy child, or a solid 87 cents an hour job for your family and a child in tears? That's why I'm bringing back capital punishment for children, because they are not contributing to our economy. Clean water is a joke, people. It's time to drink coal like a real man. Our donors and their mistresses are suffering, like my buddy Rich Hinkle, a kind man who needs the blood of baby deer to survive. I will save the millionaire class in West Virginia because they are being threatened by clean water, fresh air, and terrorist gerbils. So pump out your cash, pump off your mistress, and let's get to the polls. Together, we will send West Virginia back to the Dark Ages, where you, hippies, can go to hell.
Paid for by J.K. James, American Environmental, the Chump Organization, Him Sung Hu, WS54, and people like you.
Political ads on the Dracula Podcast. Whoever thought we would see the day? Via Deadline, Claes Bang stakes claim as Dracula in Hartswood's Netflix and BBC drama. Star of The Girl in the Spider's Web, Claes Bang will take the lead role in the 3-part series for the SVOD service and British public broadcaster, with filming set to start next year. It is produced by Hartwood Films, and it will consist of 3 90-minute episodes, a la Sherlock as before. Quoting directly from the site, written and created by Stephen Moffat and Mark Gatiss, the series is inspired by Bram Stoker's classic novel and will reintroduce the world to Dracula, the vampire who made evil sexy. In Transylvania in 1897, the blood-drinking count is drawing his plans against Victorian London. They use sexy more than once. Hopefully they don't go romantic with it. One of the executive producers says, quote, "Hell has a new boss, and BBC One has an outstanding new leading man. To say we have lucked out with Claes would be to underestimate the supreme talents of Stephen, Mark, and the team at Hartswood, and their knack for choosing the right actor to redefine an iconic role. Seriously exciting stuff." Few things. 1, they're further along than what we thought they would be. 2, the guy looks the part. He has the looks. He's about the right age, those sunken eyes. He's also the European Film Award winner for Best Actor. Other credits to his name is the currently filming The Burnt Orange Heresy, Lyrebird, which is in post-production, The Glass Room, also in post, Hotel Boy, which is a short, The Square, Cologne PD, a television series, and Spell and Max, also a television series. It's going to be one of those wait and see, but I have a lot more faith in this than I do certainly any theatrical presentation which has come out in a long time. Gatiss and Moffat know exactly what they're doing. I would have preferred that they cast Mina and Jonathan first. However, I get where they're going with it, but hopefully, they're going to stay true to the character and the novel. And now, let's divert. We gave you a great read last week, but now it's time for a stinker. Before I tear this thing apart, I'll preface that I think that Karen Essex, a good writer and given better material, great. She's a romance novel writer. Objectively, look at the words and how they're paced and how the story pans out, and she does a good job. However, I stumbled across Dracula in Love in my quests for other good Dracula novels. For starters, I was doomed when I discovered it was a romantic novel. Dracula and romance usually equates pissing me off. But again, there are good Dracula love stories. Adams' 1979 and Coppola's films are a tribute to that. There are other films which touch on it as well. It really started with Dan Curtis's version of Dracula in 1974, starring Jack Palance, and you can pick that up on Blu-ray, but it does show its age. But Dracula in Love falls victim to a bunch of no-nos in my Dracula playbook. Dracula is not romantic. Dracula is not romantic. Dracula is not romantic. What about his actions in the novel make him a romantic figure? I know most disagree because they've been trained that way via films. We're going to settle this debate right now. Here are 2 quotes from the novel, both of which are from Dracula's mouth. From chapter 21. Dracula has Mina on the bed after biting her. Then he mocks her. Specifically, he says, "You are to be punished for what you have done." Then he forces her to suck on his chest so that she, quote, "must either suffocate or swallow some of the..." Wow. Pretty hot. I know women love it when dudes in black break into their bedroom, threaten to kill their partner, rip out their necks, suck out their blood, insult them, threaten them, and force their heads to the chest in a violent manner. And then, oh yeah, then they suck the blood right out of his teat. That's really romantic, very. The second is also quoting Dracula 2 chapters later in chapter 23. "Your girls that you all love are mine already, and through them you and others shall yet be mine, my creatures to do my bidding and to be my jackals when I want to feed." I want you to note that Dracula says they, Jonathan, Van, and crew, love the girls, Mina, Lucy. He doesn't call them lovers or friends or confidants. He calls them girls. And then he calls them 2 specific names, creatures and jackals. The word creature is associated to high negative connotations. Loosely, it's defined as created, non-human, artificial, and in small cases, a human being. My creatures, my non-humans. The second is more telling. Besides being animals, the jackal is associated with people who perform dishonest, menial, degrading, or base deeds as the follower of another. Slaves. It's meant to humiliate them. Since this book is rooted so deeply in Christian mythos, it's even worse. Grief-causing, misfortunes, predators, not good. So now that we've set that up, let's go to the book. Despite Mina being the protagonist, this is one of the pieces of Dracula mythos that does terrible damage to her. It takes the idea of sexualizing Mina and Lucy and builds on it. It takes a horrendous relationship and tries to normalize it. Feminist critics have pointed to Twilight as a propagator of an abusive relationship. In this version, Jonathan, Seward, and Van Helsing are now creeps. Yes, blood and sex have a lot in common, but in this book it pushes it in the wrong direction. It tries to be sexy, but it really comes off as strange. Here are some spoilers for you in case you do want to read the book. 1. Mina is sent to the asylum. Why? Because she's a woman. That's not a joke. The second, Dracula and Mina also attend a ball which Drac calls a, quote, collective hallucination of mass desire, meaning he and Mina Harker are together with masks, and he says the words, a collective hallucination of mass desire. And number 3, Dracula and Mina are part of the vampire mythos. And the vampire mythos comes from a very unexpected mythological source. Mina and Dracula are fairies. As in Tinkerbell fairies. Not slurs used against the LGBT community, but actual fairies with wings on them. The worst sin of all, it turns Mina Harker into a victim from the opening chapter. Once again, Stoker's novel was empowering to women. It was terrifying and engaging, and this book makes it feel impersonal. When I consume such jarring media in the Dracula mythos, I look at the creator's other stuff to see whether there are patterns or it's a one-time thing, like Universal Studios. They like to have their thumb on their monster products, and since 1979, they've struck out. But this time it's the latter. I'm not a romance novel reader, but objectively, Karen Essex does solid work, but with this book, no. Not with Dracula, no way. And after that jarring conclusion, we'll be right back at you with the Dracula Podcast. Here we go.
All right, let's check our emails. The first item is a controller and 2 games for a Nintari 36,000. It's $88.17 and call. Ask for May I Touch 'em. M-A-E-I Touch 'em. Yes. Our next item is, wow, I can't believe this. Right off of I-79 is a contractor who will be dropping loads of fertilizer, loads of dirt which can be used to fertilize any garden. A luscious, fresh-smelling load of dirt. I gotta get me some of that. The loads will be given away free to anyone wearing a Cleveland Browns t-shirt. Oh my. Just find Reynold McDonald and be sure to wear white. And folks, that's all we got for this Tuesday. So enjoy another day, and thank you for listening to our Tradio.
And one last thing before I go, I have been doing some live commentary on Dracula films.
John Badham, the director of this, he did Saturday Night Fever, but he also directed a little gem in the 80s, one of the funniest films I've ever seen, called Short Circuit, with Steve Guttenberg. He could have played Dracula. Hey guys!
And honestly, it's not as funny as what I would want it to be. I would love to commentate films that I like, but it's not that funny.
It's like they took a really nice shirt and they put it in the washer and bleached the shit out of it. It's still very effective, but if you saw it back in the day, you knew what was up. Now, Mina finds Dracula in a cave. He's not all in black, but he's actually in a fur coat, the same type of fur as the wolf. And before the night's over, Dracula's going to see her fur.